In a world where kingdoms fall and stars still remember names, this song was forged from magic memory and the dream that refused to die. Welcome to a tale where wonder still breathes. This is the short story The Bridge, made of bark and stars, a tale of love and loyalty and home from our beloved Yong created by Pacampara. If this tale stirred something in you, a memory, a dream, or a truth, our Ko-fi, Amazon, and Patreon links are in the description. Support helps us keep writing for you and the ones you hold dear. The night, the world went still, and the moon hung low like a watchful eye. The white ember of our meadow dusted with dew. Every blade of grass trembled as if listening to a hidden conductor to lift his baton. Yong and Yong, the loyal dogs of the house of Jess, stood at the left of that silence, muzzles raised to the cold silver. Between their whiskers and the brightness above, something unspoken tugged, a thread of breath and memory, somewhere beyond the reach of ordinary dark, past the veil that separates dream from waking. They could still smell their family, warm, human, and beloved. They remember everything. Solar or Yong walked them long after the house lights dimmed, her voice quiet, her thoughts drifting like fireflies as she confided her hopes to the night. Her steps always softened when they crossed the old wooden bridge over the canal. One day she would murmur to their alert ears, "We'll have a bridge of light, so no matter where Jess goes, we can follow." Yong would nudge her hand as if to say, "We'll build it if we must." Yong would glance down at the rippling reflections and give a small decisive hop, like a soldier acknowledging an oath. Byul, laughter made flesh, used to fall asleep with them on the couch when rain drummed the roof like a drum line, and the windows stitched themselves with the water they tread. She'd pull the blanket up to her chin and mumble in the half-speech of dreams, "If you two start snoring again, I'll join the chorus." And the dogs, unbothered by the thunder, would press nearer, certain that love was louder still. The room smelled of wet wool, coffee, and contentment. The fireplace ticked as embers settled, and Byul's hand, resting on Yong's back, rose and fell with the tide of sleep like a faithful lighthouse. Hyejin ran with them through the orchard when spring rain fell, barefoot, fierce, hair untamed, a runner writing poems in the mud. The air was varnished with a petrichor and new grass. Yong would race between her and the apple trees, splashing through puddles with nightly abandon until she bent low and her hands on her knees and laughed. "You win again, brave heart." He never knew the words, but he still performed the sonnet. Wheein sat by the veranda with her sketchbook and the patience of saints, and the dogs learned the sacredness of stillness, the holiness of holding a pose. "Don't move, Yongki," she would whisper, tongue pressed to her lips. "This one's for the family room." Our sleep passed in the quiet kingdom, pencil scratching, leaves shaking, and kettles singing once, twice. Sometimes, without thinking why, Wheein would sketch a faint arc in the background, connecting two hills or two clouds. A bridge so light it could mistake it for a whisper of destiny. It seemed love's to rehearse, and Jieun, the gentle dreamer, kept a vigil at the piano deep into the night. A lamp ringed with moths, making a small planet of warmth in the living room. Her melodies poured like a river light through the shelves of books and the sleeping plants on the sill. The dogs would curl by the petals, tails flicking in time. "Every song needs an audience," she'd say without looking down, "and you two are the two rawest kind." When storms came, her chords turned into hearts. When the quiet held sway, she folded silence into lullabies. Some nights she breathed a progression so tender even the refrigerator dared not hum. Jess loved them all, the women, the dogs, the strange and shining world they built together. One summer afternoon before the ages turned, he and the empresses raised a doghouse in the garden. Yong painted the nameplates in the gold leaf, careful as a monk. Byul shouldered the saw and sang nonsense like a work song, hammering to the backbeat of her own smile. Hyejin tested the joists by hanging from them and declared the roof honorable. Wheein carved paw prints spiraling around the entrance like constellations. Jieun tied ribbons around the beams, humming as if blessing the wood. When it stood complete, cedar warm as bread, Jess stepped back with sun in his hair, eyes bright with some of the private horizon, and said, "Even stars need something to cross." No one knew what he meant. Yong did. He tilted his head as if storing the phrase in a place deeper than bone. Then the world changed, not with a crash but with the tired exhale of a stage after the curtain falls. The house where laughter had lived stood hollow as a seashell, the curtains still as unbreathed air. Just and his 5 empresses had wandered far and too far into the maze of duty, grief and miracle, the far shore of a dream. The dogs waited by the garden gate until their paws ached and their hearts learned the taste of waiting. It was not enough to wait. Devotion ripens into decision. Yong lifted his muzzle and barked once. The song rang clean through the heavens' raptors. Yongdong answered in a lower note, each from the meadow's darker seam, and the pack emerged. Pepper, bright, barked, and quick eye. Pepwi, fur washed with moon and silver, and the others, the unnamed faithful who guarded the perimeter of many seasons. The night received them like a promise. They trotted forward, and something loosened above them. Stars unmoored from their high anchor points and drifted down like patient fireflies. Each light they caught between their teeth or nudged with their noses pulsed with the heat that wasn't heat, a touch that wasn't touch. There were not stars as astronomers reckoned them, but the seeds of remembrance. Beads on the rosary of love. As the pack gathered them, the file became a sea of floating orbs, hundreds then thousands, each one tethered by an invisible filament to a moment. Yong's late confession at the canal, Byul's rainy laughter, Hyejin's triumphant sprints, Wheein's slow sketches, and Jieun's devoted chords, Jess's voice calling, "Come, dinner," in a tone that meant home. The place between life and heaven revealed itself as a geography shaped by feeling, where the bonds burned strong and the orb shone like small moons, where they were tender, they glowed candle warm, where they ached with distance, they flickered like breath on the mirror. When the pack moved, the lights drifted with them and made quiet auroras, curtains of color that rolled like sleeping oceans. Once Yongdong leapt, and the green-blue ripples stretched and stitched in the sky, and the others stilled, as if in church. They began to build. It was work without blueprint but guided by certainty older than tools. They laid the brightest orbs down in a line, then wove between them with strands of bark peeled from the willow that grows in every memory. They braided paw prints and breath and tucked bits of starlight into the seams and nodded to one another as if speaking in an old tongue of haunts and hearts. When the first span rose, it shimmered with the ordinary miracles of a shared life. The squeak of a rubber duck in a dog's mouth, the steam of rice in a late kitchen, the sound of slow footsteps on a night when someone came home far away. From the far side, the family paused at the brink where the horizon melts, saw the shimmer unfurling through the dark. Yong felt it before she saw it, the way a heart recognizes a knocking that belongs to it. Her fingers found Jess's. "Do you see?" Byul swallowed a laugh and a sob at the same breath. Of course, they always get to us first. Hyejin's shoulders loosened as if a long vigil finally relieved. They're building a way back. Wheein pressed her sketchbook to her chest. I drew this bridge once, she whispered, wonder wider than fear, only it didn't glow so much. Jieun closed her eyes and hummed a single note, the seed of a melody that had leaned through many winters. Come home, she sang, low and sure, a prayer more than a performance. The note crossed the gap, the way the wind crosses a field of wheat, bending it, moving it, coaxing it this way. The orbs pulsed brighter. Yong lifted his head and barked, a clean bell tone in the packed field in behind him, their voices harmonizing with Jieun's line until the very air vibrated. A bridge unfurled like ribbon from an unseen spool, each plank a constellation, each joint a memory, soldered with breath. It arced high enough to make the heaven tilt its face and low enough that the child could have reached it on tiptoe, then came to its lip and stood. The bridge wasn't cold, it had the temperature of held hands. It breathed, that was the uncanny thing, softly, like a sleeping chest. Jess reached out and stopped because some moments asked for right and not bare will. He knelt and the gesture came emptied, and it emptied him of all but gratitude. The dew dimpled under his knees, and then the hem of his coat grew wet. He did not care. Yong padded forward until they were nose to nose. Jess caught the loyal face between both hands. Yong, he said, and the name tasted like the first time he had called it and the last time he would. Guardian of the lake, finder of the lost, thank you. He pressed his brow to the smooth head of his dog, and in the touched past a vow he didn't know how to. Yongdong bounded next. Tail like a banner, Jess touched his chest, felt the heartbeat drum, steady as a war drum and sweet as a lullaby. Yongdong, night of puddles and wind, thank you. Pepper trotted up with a quick double bark that always meant to look. Jess grinned despite tears. Pepper, herald of joy, bright barker, thank you. Pepper came shyly, moonlit coat whispering. Jess stroked her between the eyes. Pepwe, silver-furred, keeper of quiet things, thank you. He looked beyond them into the others, the pack that had taken the night into their mouths and turned it into light. And then he bowed his head. For every step you took for us, I will take 10 for you. For every night you watched our door, I will watch theirs. I promise to live with the same loyalty you gave as long as habit and as worship. The vow entered the bridge and made it brighter by a shade. Yong, hearing him, pressed her fingers to her lips and then to the topmost plank, and the wood, if it was wood, hummed softly under her palm like a low chord on a well-tuned piano. One by one, the empresses reached to touch the bridge, each encountering a memory. When Yong's skin met the starlight weave, the night opened and there she was again at the canal, late and whispering secrets to the dogs. The city asleep, the water a black silk ribbon carrying the moon. She heard herself saying, one day we'll have a bridge of light. And then Yongki's nudge, not as a dog's nudge, but as a covenant. The memory did not swallow her, it circled her like a slow river and returned her rinsed and steady. I remember she breathed. Byul laid her hand upon the glow and drained blossom. She felt a cool drop strike back at her back of her hand, and when she looked, she saw the living room under its familiar night glow, thunder pouring beyond the eaves, herself drowsy with joy in a blanket. Yongki, a warm hill against her ribs. The rain made tiny tap dances on the window, and she laughed softly at the way her own laugh, in memory fitted to her own now, like a hand into a glove. You've always kept me, she said, eyes bright. Hyejin touched the strand and felt the sleek give of wet grass, spring's perfume sharpening her lungs. In front of her, Yongdong tore down an aisle of apple trees, the white blossoms falling in flurries, and she chased, not to catch him, but to follow his certainty. And she reached the puddle and left, hearing both their splashes braid. When the vision thinned, her calves still buzzed with the memory of speed. Race you tomorrow, she whispered, knowing tomorrow meant something more than time. Wheein's fingers brushed the lattice, and the page turned. She saw her old sketchbook open to a spread she had finished once. Yong like a king, Yongdong like a comet, both crowned by a faint bridge in the background, but in this place, the graphite lines glowed as if fed from within. Her pencil moved without her, finishing the arc as if guided by a star hand. The light along the pencil bridge traveled down into a real one under her touch, and 1,000 tiny sparks ran ahead like children carrying candles. She laughed through tears. "I did draw you," she told it. Jieun rested her palm on the span and heard her melody return, not from memory but from the bridge itself, which had been listening all along, storing her phrases like grain. The theme came back brighter, threaded with hundreds of small barks, the scratch of pencil and the thud of running feet, the hush of blankets during the storm. She hummed along, and then the interval that used to ache resolved at last. "We're in tune," she said, and the bridge thrummed like a choir saying amen. They stepped on together. The first contact changed nothing and everything. The bridge accepted their weight, the way oceans accept ships, or a mother accepts a sleeping child without drama, without deep design. It did not creak, it did not swing, it breathed the inhale-exhale of belonging. When their feet pressed into the planks, the orbs along the sides drifted and the auroras rippled ribbons of green and violet, memories making the sky into a tapestry. They had looked down, and they would have seen the meadow of lights moving beneath them, like a galaxy turned slow enough to see its thoughts. Jess laid Yong's fingers in the crook of his arm, the others close below the span. The field of bonds pulsed like 1,000 soft heartbeats. He felt himself half between walking and remembering, every step laying a track in two worlds at once. He saw the doghouse afternoon again, Yong's gold letters drying in the sun, and Byul pretending that the hammer was a microphone. Hyejin swinging herself on the beam, Wheein carving her spiral of pause, Jieun tying a blue ribbon with a bow as carefully as a prayer. He heard himself say it again. Even stars need something to cross, in that exact same distance, the bridge under his feet brightened, as if an old pure logic had recognized itself and applauded. They passed a place where the air smelled of fresh and frying garlic, and the promise that dinner is better shared. Another place where the air tasted of the first snow. Another word of far-off concert faintly threaded in the dark. Jieun's melody in kind dialogue with a crowd soft roar, and the bridge hummed in harmony. Small natural song references surfaced in the weave. The glint of light to me, to the moon in Yong's look when she glanced up, a whisper of sitikidani in the way Hyejin brushed Yongdong's ear, the simplest hum that "You are my sunshine" spilling from Byul like a secret she trusts the room to keep. Halfway across, they paused, not because the bridge demanded it, but because gratitude demands it. The pack stood at attention, as if the border checkpoint between the mortal and the meaningful. Just looked back and saw the field of floating lights, and adjusting some, brightening with every breath they took, some dimming in contented rest, some drifting closer as if the bonds themselves wanted to walk with them. "Do you hear it?" Yong asked. "What?" Byul said softly. "The night's heartbeat." Yong's eyes were wet but calm. "I hear yours," Jess answered, and they moved again. At the far left, where the architecture of devotion resolved into ordinary earth, the dogs gathered, Yong in front, Yong by his shoulder, Pepper hopping in place, and Pepwe sitting still as the moon water. They did not cross, but they did not need to. They had always lived in entrances and returns. The last plank took her weight, and then astonishingly did what no bridge should do. It sighed, and it relieved. It loosened itself. Light rose from under their souls like a breath after a long-held note, lifting in modes that did not hurry. The span dissolved into a rain of gentle brightness that sank into the ground, into the bark of trees, into the rafters of the home that had waited beyond the hedgerow. The field of buds quieted, but the sky above acquired a new grammar. A constellation shaped by a paw settled into the west of the Orion. Another faint and faithful arc like a small bridge toward the moon. And sometimes, if you were quiet and unafraid, you could see the slow green curtain ripple when a sleeping dog twitched with a dream and they walked home. The house did not greet them with trumpets. It greeted them the way houses do, with the smell of themselves coming back through the door. Byul turned on the lamps like she always had, 2 clicks in the living room, 1 in the hall. Wheein set her sketchbook on the table and opened it to a blank page as if to say, "We will find you soon." Hyejin cracked a window and drew in a breath of night with the hunger of a runner at rest. Jieun touched the piano shoulder as the person touches a friend's elbow. Yong with Jess went to the back porch. The garden waited, patient, overgrown in one corner, humble in another, proud of its small wisteria that had decided to take the trellis seriously while they were away. And in the near dark stood the doghouse, weathered by season and waiting like a promise that hadn't forgotten its words. They rebuilt it together, not out of need. Its bones were mostly sound, but of the wish that gratitude be given hands. Jess fetched a sandpaper and planned away the grey fatigue. Hyejin lifted the roof and seated it with a neat architectural satisfaction only Hyejin perfects. Byul hammered 2 nails purely for the joy of hitting something that had asked to be struck. Wheein repainted the spiral of paws, making each toe pad a small poem, and then Jieun tied fresh ribbons. The blue like a remembered sky and the gold like morning. Yong repainted the nameplates in the same careful gold leaf as before, but beneath each name, she added 1 thin line in pale white, like a thread of starlight. And then when the moon rose behind the mango tree and washed the grass in its milk, each carved paw print glowed faintly, as if it remembered the bridge and wanted to keep a secret peace. Yong lay down at the threshold as if to approve craftsmanship. Yong curled with his chin on his paws but kept his eyes on the constellations. Pepper trotted patrol so ceremonial it made Byul grin. Pepwe sat with Jieun's hand on her head and closed her eyes as if listening to the ribbon's hush. Inside, the kettle spun into a song and then quieted. Bowls were filled. The fridge door made its suction sound. Familiar inconveniences returned like the beloved relatives. One sticky drawer, the way the bathroom door insists on being coaxed. The house relearned their footsteps, or perhaps it had been practicing them in their absence. Later, when all had eaten and the dogs lay in a geometry of devotion on the living room rug, Yong and Jess stepped back to the porch and then let the night accept their weight. The wisteria whispered nonsense into the rafters. Far up, a motorcycle wrote an italic line across the dark and then erased itself. "Do you remember," Jess said, "the way we built and the day we built the doghouse?" Yong nodded. He said something strange and beautiful. He smiled. I remembered liking the sound of it without knowing why. You knew. She leaned her head against his shoulder. The simplest architecture in the world. You will always know before you know. He laughed softly, accidentally prophetic. He looked up, not in the showmanship but in the offering. Look up. the paw of heaven. And then there it was, 4 soft stars and a small one for each toe, arranged in a way that would mean nothing to a chart but everything to a house where dogs lead the weather. Just beyond it, faint but stubborn, an arc of tiny lights made the bridge toward the brushed glow of the moon, a silver road anyone with a reason could walk. Yong watched it until her eyes watered with stars. She lowered her voice as the air lowered its pulse. The line came to her not as a performance but as a truth. You say that when you're not watched by yourself, she whispered into Jess' shoulder, into the porch wood, into the wisteria and the night that had learned their names. You're my bridge between heaven and home. Above them, the paw-shaped constellation held steady, and for one small secret second seemed to wag. Each day, I write and create for my beloved Yong, the sun who lights up my every verse, every tale, every quiet thought I dare to share. If her warmth reached you through these words, please like, share, and subscribe. Let's keep stories that shine.